Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 2025 program of Wild Ones Delmarva. My name is Conchetta. I'm the president of the chapter. We're a seedling chapter of Wild Ones, so just getting started off the ground into our flow of things. I've got a few chapter updates before our program today. So quick chapter updates. We have 26 members. We have 42 people on our email list, so 26 plus the extra to make up that 42. We are still looking for chapter leaders. So reach out if you're interested in helping take the lead in different parts of what we do with the chapter. Once we have a full board established, we have our programs, we have our members, we'll be ready to fully charter as a chapter of Wild Ones. Our next program is going to be our social meet and greet Friday, April 11th from 6 to 8 p.m. at 10 Ike Brewing in Queenstown. It's across from Chesapeake College. You take the road in past the cat hospital. And the last quick update, less chapter related, but the Maryland Native Plant Program list is officially taking nurseries to register for being a gold, silver, or bronze level nursery that sells straight species native plants. So if you look up just a quick Google search, native plant program list, I'm going to send it out with our next email as well. So you guys have the link to that, but you can just search that quickly and see the process. And I saw they have an incredible working list of native plants in the area that should be on people's nursery lists. It should be in your gardens. It has all the conditions, like it's color coded. It's really great. It's a great working list so far. So for today, anybody in person, there is a restroom outside around the corner, and there's water in the back. Anyone online, let us know if you have any trouble hearing, and the caption should be available as well for you to turn on. I'm going to be on the Wild Ones Delmarva account here, so send a chat if you're not able to hear or there's any issues on the tech side. Everyone, the recording is going to be available. I think I'm just going to automatically send it out to everyone that registered, and it will be available as requested for anyone that didn't register or isn't here today. So thank you to Jennifer for that. Any updates? Chapter-wise, anything else I missed? Anything cool anyone's experiencing? And I'll translate for virtual too.
Well, the Maryland Native Plant Society's Eastern Shore chapter is up and running.
Hooray!
So our civic meeting is one and the actors, and it's a lot of excitement about moving forward. And or next we have an event together, right? Maybe 27. In Massachusetts.
Perfect.
That.
Great. So anyone who didn't hear, Maryland the Eastern Shore chapter of Maryland Native Plant Society is up and running. Y'all are accepting members, I imagine, at this point. Yes. They had their first meeting, and we, with Wild Ones Delmarva and that chapter, we're doing a group, a co-hosted table. What is the event called again? Is there a flyer yet?
Yes.
The Pollinator Festival.
That's great, yeah. Yeah.
End of April will be the Pollinator Festival in Chesapeake. So we'll try to get that flyer out once it exists, yeah, I suppose. Is ready?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get that one out as well.
And if anybody wants to carpool, if anybody's interested in going, wants to carpool, maybe
sure. If you're interested in carpooling, go ahead and send an email to us or give us a call. And we'll set up a carpool to go down.
It's just Saturday. It's a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just Saturday. I have to do 4 miles on Fort Miles Day, bring back.
We're discussing that as one day of an event. So if anyone's interested, let us know. Great. Anything else? If there's anything from the chat that I'm not seeing at the moment, we'll discuss it at the end. So right now, I'd like to introduce our presenter today, one of our co-founders of the chapter, Jennifer Vaccaro from ShoreRivers, talking about garden-worthy native plants and alternative native species that you can grow in your garden for all year round. So if there's questions, write them down, put them in the chat, and we'll take questions after the presentation. Good to see everyone.
Thanks so much, Conchetta. Thank you for inviting me to be here to talk with you all. So my name is Jennifer Vaccaro. I'm the Community Restoration Manager for ShoreRivers. My background is I'm a landscape architect by training. I had my own design business for a long while and have shifted back into the nonprofit sector. My roots were in Watershed Stewards Academy over in Anne Arundel County before that. And my husband and I also operate, well, he operates it now, but we used to operate together a natural resource consulting company doing a lot of invasive species removal. Our most famous co-workers were our eco goats that we used to take around for grazing. They have since retired. But so I'm excited to come and talk to you all today about garden-worthy alternatives to commonly planted invasive plants. Just by way of a little bit of background, for those who aren't familiar with ShoreRivers, who I work for now, we are a waterkeeper organization. Our mission is to protect Maryland's Eastern Shore waterways through science-based advocacy, restoration, education, and engagement. So I am a member of the Community Engagement Department. So we, at the center of our organization are our 4 river keepers. These are the watersheds that we work within. So each of those 4 watersheds has a river keeper, and that river keeper is the voice of the river. He's out advocating for policy, for clean water. He is empowered with the ability to sue on behalf of the river. And he does a lot of outreach and education and listening in the community and just working on behalf of the health of the river. And then in addition to, or including the river keepers, we have 30 full-time employees dedicated to our rivers. And so they are spread amongst these departments, the Agriculture and Restoration Department, who does a lot of work with farmers here on the Eastern Shore. As we know, agriculture is a huge source of water pollution. And so we at ShoreRivers have taken the approach that we want to work with farmers and not against farmers to find mutually beneficial solutions to pollution. And we have a fabulous education department who is working within our school systems here on the Eastern Shore. Many of you may know that in Maryland, we actually have an environmental literacy mandate. It's a requirement for kids to graduate. They need to complete certain environmental literacy learning programs, including a meaningful watershed experience where they get outside and experience our resources. And here on the Eastern Shore, most of our school systems do not have the capacity or the budget to provide those requirements. And so that's where ShoreRivers comes in, and we provide those for kids around our watershed. So really quickly, I promise we're going to get to the plants. I just want to talk a little bit about water pollution sources. So here, in Maryland, 60% of our watershed is farmland. That is a huge source of pollution. Wastewater, so sewer, septic systems, municipal and industrial discharges are a source of pollution. And then urban and residential runoff. And that is where we come in with our native plants. So those are all issues, and they're all, causing excess nutrients and sediment and bacteria problems within our watersheds. And as we experience climate change and sea level rise, those issues are all being exacerbated. So ShoreRivers has a program called River Friendly Yards. And that program is predicated on this idea that, everyone can do something, no one can do everything. So collectively, we're all these like little droplets that are creating a flood for reducing pollutants in our waterways. And so, we are advocating for less lawn. Here in Maryland, we are farming 1.3 million acres of turf, which I think is an astonishing number, and spending $5 billion with a B dollars a year on turf lawns, and applying 86 million pounds of nitrogen on lawns. So if we eliminated that and did low impact landscaping, We could conserve water, lower maintenance costs, provide pollution prevention, and create habitat for wildlife. So that's when we start to talk about native plants. I know pretty much, everyone in this room is here because you're interested in native plants, so you know what a native plant is. You know why they're important. These are things that I usually talk to audiences who aren't bought into this idea yet. But as we know, they provide essential habitat for birds and pollinators and improve water quality and create a sense of placemaking and increase mental health. And we like to think they represent hope in action. That's that actual, physical thing you can do, putting that plant in the ground to make a difference in your little piece of the planet that you control. Does everybody know what invasive plants are? I think we can probably skip this, right? They're a problem. We know they're a problem. We know they should be removed and replaced with native plants. So what do we plant? That's the question, right? So I'm going to go through these categories of commonly found invasive plants and talk about what could take their place and provide that same level of interest in our gardens. So for ground covers, these were the 6, bad ones, the most commonly planted bad ones that we see out there, that are taking over our woodlands. They're endangering the health of our canopy trees, and they're just basically not very well behaved in our gardens. So who do we want to put back when we take those away? So Packera, how many people have heard about the Holy Church of the Packera, ecosystem services attended daily? So this is a favorite plant that, it's semi-evergreen. That basal foliage tends to persist in the wintertime. It survives from sun to shade, depending on how much moisture you have in your soil. I do also there's another species of Packera that doesn't get quite as much glory, and that is the Aboveda. And that one can take a little more sun without the added moisture. It's a little more drought tolerant, I would say, than the Aria. And these are deer resistant, which we all know it comes with a grain of salt. It just depends on how desperate your deer are. Wild ginger, also a favorite for those shadier sites with nice organic soils. Also want some moisture, deer resistant, fabulous texture, ginger. Carex, I don't have a specific species here for you because if you have a situation, there is a Carex for it. Mount Cuba has a fabulous guide book that you can download on their website on Carex. These are our native sedges, and they talk about all the different varieties of sedges that are out there and what situations they grow in. As you can see, they come in a variety of textures and colors. So there really is one out there for everyone, and they are a fabulous substitute for liriope and great food for birds and insects. Our native spiderwort, also a lovely alternative to liriope, has nice blooms on it. It's very adaptable. You can grow it under a black walnut, which is a short list of plants that can say that. And it's of special value to our native farms. Ostrich fern. This makes a wonderful ground cover. It just, marches forth 18 inches at a time, across your garden. But, luckily it's pretty easy to lop off, the new shoot that comes up if you don't want it to go any further. It does like rich soil with consistent moisture, but it's a fabulous hiding place for all these lovely critters, water thrushes and wood thrushes and robins and wrens and frogs. And I think they, have a wonderful texture and stature in the garden too. Sensitive fern, one of my favorite ferns. I think it just has that like prehistoric feeling to it. Also wonderful shelter for salamanders and frogs, and wants a moist, organic, shady site. This is one of my very favorite ground covers. It is super tough. I did a design for a church in Annapolis. They wanted to remove turf from a very steep hillside on Bestgate Road. And so we did this wonderful design that had all these different kinds of native plants on it, planted in big drifts, and nobody maintained it. And so years later, they called me back for, we got this group of people together. We want to kind of rehabilitate this and get it back looking nice. And so I came out and I looked, and, I would say like 50% of the site was in bad shape, like it had a lot of weeds. But 50% of the site was covered in this, and it really held its ground. And I was like, okay, let's put more of this and, add a couple of other things now that you're going to have some volunteers that are going to be maintaining this regularly. But I was so impressed at this plant, our fragrant sumac's ability to kind of hold its ground, on a steep site with a lot of weed pressure. I wish that I had a better picture of it. My mission this fall is to get a wonderful picture of this in the landscape doing its thing. Because this just doesn't do it justice, but the fall color is fabulous, and the birds really, love the fruit that it provides. And it's a great nectar source and wonderful for erosion control.
That's a question.
Yes.
Source for some of these, like the fragrant sumac.
That is available widely.
Oh, is it?
Yes, and the Grollo particularly is the easiest to find. I feel like almost every nursery has it.
They had it last
Okay.
year.
Yeah, and I think Unity probably should have it, and how many people have been to a little farm and nursery in Stevensville? It's a really sweet little nursery right on Route 8. Not that far from where you get off of 50. And she is focused on native plants. Yeah. Are they having trouble hearing me?
It's a video issue. Oh, good.
Is that all this area?
So that is a great question. The plants that I am discussing today are regionally native. So I know we have this like continuum of how native is it, right? Is it native to my county? Is it native to my state? Is it native to the coastal plain? Is it native to the eastern US? And so I feel like my own personal feeling on this, and we all, have a range of opinions, is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like the first thing we need to be thinking about is getting a lot of these non-native, plants from Eurasia and other parts out of our landscapes and putting things back that the wildlife that we have here are adapted to use. And I think, thinking about plants that grow in the coastal plain is a good start with that. The insects that we have here in Maryland, not so different from the insects that we have in Virginia or Delaware or North Carolina. And we're also facing climate change, which is going to create a lot of stress on the plants that are adapted here. And we're going to start to see migration of species happen, but species migration is going to happen really slowly. So we as gardeners have the ability to help it along and put some things in the landscape that are going to survive the heat and the drought. And our insects are going to say, oh, hey, I can use that, right? So, maybe an oak that grows in North Carolina right now, but not necessarily in Maryland, is gonna end up moving here, but our insects are gonna recognize that as an oak. So I think, you know, when I talk about native plants, I'm usually looking regionally, and I am looking at what's gonna handle the coastal plain. I do have some cultivars listed in my slideshow. My feeling on cultivars is, if we haven't mucked around with the flower, and we haven't mucked around with the leaf color, and our insects are able to recognize and utilize that plant, I'm okay with it. If it means somebody is gonna take liriope out of their front yard and put in something else that's native, but is short in stature and doesn't spread all over the place, and they feel like they have a landscape that achieves the aesthetic that they are accustomed to. So I feel like we have to bring people along on this continuum from roses and heuchera to things that are beneficial to our wildlife. And we can't go straight from rip your lawn and your garden out and put in a meadow. Like that is just a non-starter for so many people. For some of us, it's fine, and we appreciate the aesthetics of a meadow, but I'm really cognizant of winning hearts and minds and bringing them along with us on this journey. So, so that's a very long answer to your question, but thank you for asking it, because I think that's a really important part of the conversation.
Yeah, and that's, I think goes back to, what Richard was talking about, the spreadsheets that is being published, because that goes back to what is really good, the coastal plain one has grown here in Maryland, but that has been originally from this area. So I think I look forward to see that list, because it does meet the, I guess, what has been seen,
The strictest form of native.
yeah.
Okay, so moving on from ground covers, let's talk a little bit about shrubs with fall color. So burning bush and Japanese barberry have been ubiquitous in the landscape. Developers love to plant these things. And they have been an absolute scourge on the woodlands. You know, I mentioned at the beginning that my husband and I worked for many years on invasive species eradication. You know, we had a lot of clients with large woodlands that we were going and trying to get rid of the invasive plants, and barberry was a huge offender, huge. You know, out in the middle of the big woods, huge thickets of barberry. They get hydroseeded in there by the birds, and they just go to town. So we messed around the whole thing. Okay, there we go. So what do we put back? Fothergilla, witch alder is a favorite of mine for fall color. It also has lovely texture in the summer, that clean foliage, nice kind of medium to bold textured foliage. And then the sweet little bottle brush flowers in the spring. It's a great nectar source. It has a nice fragrance to it, and it's adaptable to sun to part shade and average to moist acid. It does want some acid in its soil. It's suddenly not advancing. Okay. Itea, Virginia sweet spire. Same kind of cultural conditions. It wants a little acid. Fragrant white flowers in the spring. Great nectar source. This one has stunning fall color as well. And if you know, depending on cultivars, you can get it in a variety of heights. So the straight species is going to be taller, but there are some dwarf species out there. Red chokeberry, also lovely fall color, fragrant white flowers in April, great nectar source. And those berries, it has very astringent berries that need some frost thaw cycles before the birds find them palatable. So it's a great late winter food source for birds. Possum Hall, our native viburnum. Very adaptable, fragrant white flowers in spring. You know, birds and mammals love the fruits. I think the fruits set off against that red foliage is lovely. And this one also comes in a lot of different cultivars, and those cultivars are generally different heights. So, grasses. So these are the, you know, the big offenders in terms of the grass family. Everybody loves to plant miscanthus and pampas grass because it's beachy looking. And it is a thug. Fountain grass has become a very big offender as well. Particularly, I don't know if you guys have noticed in the landscape, there's one that has black seed heads, and that one is really, really awful. It spreads crazy fast. Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. Yes, go out and clip the seed heads in the fall and bag them to try to stop it from proliferating. So what do we put in their place? Switchgrass is one of my very favorites. This is a cultivar called Northwind. You can see, you know, in the dead of winter there, it is still standing tall. It's, you know, beautifully holding that little dusting of snow. I think it creates fabulous winter interest. The birds absolutely love the seeds. It's pretty deer resistant, and it's a larval host for skippers, which is really important. So, you know, a lot of times when we talk about our pollinators, we talk about nectar sources, but really the thing that our pollinators are missing is places for them to reproduce. So having these larval hosts is really important. And it's also providing a great cover source for birds. One of my very favorite plants, there's rarely a garden that I don't put this in, is little blue stem. So this picture does not do it justice by any means, but planted in a drift, the fall color of little blue stem is not to be beat. I just think it's amazing, and it just has these lovely jewel tones to it. It really likes dry to medium, well-drained soils. This is a plant you do not want to put compost on. It wants to suffer. Like, if your worst place, you know, most terrible soils you have, put this there and be very happy. If you make your soils too rich for it, it will flop. And it does want full sun. But it is the larval host for 6 different skippers. And those hollow stems are going to provide great nesting material for our native bees. Udalua, which is fun to look at and say, is a lovely little more diminutive grass, more delicate. It also likes those dry to slightly moist, well-drained soils. It's drought tolerant, deer tolerant, and black walnut tolerant, and has that same benefit of a larval host for 6 different skippers and nesting material for native bees. And of course, the birds like the seeds. The little blue stem, I will say, the birds go bananas for those seeds. When I lived in Annapolis, I had a big drift of it in my front yard, and in the wintertime, I mean, it was just covered with birds. They were just in there going crazy on those seeds. So I like to tell people that, you know, as far as winter interest goes, brown is a color, and sometimes the color that you bring to your garden isn't from the plants. It's from who's in your garden enjoying it. And so if you can bring those birds in with plants like this, then that's part of your winter interest. Indian grass, also really tolerant of those super tough sites. You know, don't baby it. This is often a early succession plant. So like if you have a fallow field, this is one of the ones that will populate it. It hosts 5 species of butterflies and moths. Is the larval host plant of the specialist pollinator pepper and salt skipper, and several grasshoppers and leafhopper species. And I love the sort of more bold texture of its seed heads. I think in the garden, they read really nicely. So winter interest, the big offenders are Nandina, and I have up here Oriental Bittersweet. And I put this here not because people tend to plant Oriental Bittersweet. I don't feel like it's readily available anymore, but people do tend to make Christmas decorations with Oriental Bittersweet. And they have that wreath, hanging up, and when they're done with it, a lot of times it goes in their compost pile, and that is where things go haywire. I can't tell you how many times my husband and I have traced like the mother plant in a terrible infestation to the edge of someone's yard where it's obvious that all their lawn clippings and everything else have been piled. So this one escapes very quickly and is really a huge threat to our tree canopy here in Mara. So I do include that on this slide just as a cautionary tale. But the Nandina is a problem, not only in terms of its invasiveness, but also studies are starting to show that it is potentially toxic to birds. The one species that has gotten the most attention on that is the cedar waxwing. So certainly we don't want to attract our birds in and kill them. So who do we put in its place? Winterberry holly, one of my very favorite shrubs. I don't think I could have a garden without it. There's many different cultivars of this plant, different sizes. You do need to have a male and a female. So that's tricky if you're going with just straight species, I think. I don't know if certain nurseries out there are sexing those. It's been a long time since I bought it as a straight species. If you're getting it from a garden center, they're most likely going to have cultivars for you, and they know, who the male is that you need to pollinate, whatever female you bought. But this one, the berries tend to persist through winter. It's usually like this time of year, mid-March. One day you'll come home and they're all gone. The robins have come in and just stripped the plant clean. So it's a great late winter food and also a larval host for the Henry's elfin butterfly. And you're going to want some acid in your soil for that one, as well as the inkberry holly. So this is a great alternative to your boxwoods. Similar texture. I would say, at garden centers, you tend to get cultivars. If you really want the berries, you're probably going to have to try to get it from a nursery that's growing straight species where you can get males and females. So yeah, I feel like we have work to do on this one. I will say a lot of people plant shamrock. That tends to lose the lower leaves, and people don't like that. If you're planting it at the back of your garden and have other things growing up in front of it, that's fine. Densa doesn't seem to have that problem. I don't know, Conchetta, if you have other.
Not as familiar with multiples, but you see the straight species more in some of the parts.
Oh, excellent. That's great to hear. Okay. So, Juniper gray owl. So this is a dwarf cultivar of our eastern red cedar, and eastern red cedars might be one of the toughest plants we have. So this is our native juniper, and it gets 3 feet tall and wide, and so it's a great foundation plant. This still gets, it's a female, so they are dioecious junipers. This cultivar is a female, so it gets covered in those blue, technically they're cones, they're not really berries. That's in quotation marks. They look like a berry, but they're a cone. So, it's great wildlife food. It's great cover in the winter. It's super tolerant of deer, drought, erosion, dry soil, black walnuts, and air pollution. And it's very beloved by the birds. So this is a great one for full sun. Hedging and privacy. So the biggest offenders for this one in terms of invasiveness are privet. That also just devastates woodlands, and bamboo. Like if you really hate your neighbors, plant some bamboo on the edge of your yard and make them crazy for the rest of their lives. But I'm also putting in here with a yellow, more like cautionary X, Leland cypress and arborvitae. And the reason why I have those listed is not because they're invasive. In fact, arborvitae is native to Maryland. It's not native to the coastal plain, however. It's native to the more higher elevation mountainous regions of Maryland. And people love to plant this here for a privacy screen, and it suffers. It just, like, you can drive around right now and look for people's brown hedges. It just is unhappy here. It can't take the high humidity that we have and the high temperatures in the summertime. And it really doesn't like, you know, just, it generally doesn't like the coastal plain. So we're like trying to put a square peg in the round hole by using this quote unquote native plant. So I would encourage you not to plant arborvitae. Leland cypresses are not native, they're not invasive, but they are a problem. I mean, they get way bigger than people really realize that they're going to. And then when they get so big, they tend to shade out their lower branches. And then you actually don't have that hedging and privacy that you actually were going for. And then it's a ton of maintenance to keep these things like put in, you know, in their place and from taking over. So I would discourage that. And they also are very susceptible to ice and snow damage. So you get a lot of branches breaking and then they just look unsightly. So who do we put up in their place? Bayberries can be lovely. They are a preferred food of many birds, great nesting and protection for songbirds. They're semi-evergreen here. I have listed the northern bayberry here. We are at the very southern end of its range. So it is pretty reliably evergreen here. Whereas the southern bayberry, we're kind of at the northern end of its range. And so it is semi-evergreen here. Of course, that's probably going to change as, you know, climate change comes. Although, you know, we're warmer in the winter than we were, but we're getting these weird polar vortexes. So we are getting these like crazy cold snaps. I don't know that we're going to reach a point where it's reliably warm here in the wintertime. So who knows? But they are tolerant of drought and salt and wind, and a larval host for the Columbia silk moth. The American holly, so I have it shown here clipped as a hedge. That's not my preferred aesthetic, but a lot of people like that very formal hedge look, and you can achieve that with an American holly. Or you can just plant them and let them have their natural, beautiful shape and also achieve that privacy that you're looking for. They are also, as with everybody else in the holly family, wanting some acid in their soil. And they do tolerate deer and clay. Songbirds love the fruit, as well as game birds and small animals. And they are the larval host for the Henry's elfin butterfly. Another cultivar of our eastern red cedar. So this one is selected for its it stays like this. It stays more pyramidal. So the straight species of Juniper virginiana is going to become a tree. It's going to lose its lower limbs and be beautiful and have that awesome stringy bark. But if you are looking for a hedge and some privacy, this particular cultivar is going to keep that pyramidal shape. It's going to keep those lower branches so that you have that privacy you're looking for. And it is a female, so it's gonna have the cones on it. It's gonna feed the birds. And like the other cultivar I just talked about a few minutes ago, you know, it's tolerant of deer, drought, erosion, dry soil, and air pollution. So it has all those same benefits, but just a different shape. So other bad guys that don't neatly fit into one of those other categories, autumn olive is in every farm field, I think, on the Eastern Shore. It was, you know, a fan favorite for hedgerow planting, and is terribly invasive. Butterfly bush, people love to plant this because it attracts so many different butterflies, but unfortunately, I like to say that this is like junk food for pollinators. You know, does not have those amino acids and, you know, specific compounds that our native insects are looking to get in order to complete their migration. And so we definitely don't want to be planting this. The analogy I like to use is if you were to feed your kids a bag of Doritos for dinner, you'd fill their belly up, but I don't think they'd be very healthy. They're not getting the nutrition that they need to be thriving humans. So wisteria, people love to plant it because they think it's gonna look like this, but in reality, unless you are very skilled at pruning, your wisteria is probably never gonna look like that, and it's gonna swallow the earth. So it's a scary plant. We do have a native wisteria that can be planted in its place. And the daylily, or as I like to call them, ditch lilies. If you literally throw them down in the ditch, they will survive and thrive. So those are all ones that we want to root out of our gardens and replace with natives. And this is just a little graphic that I put together that has my sort of favorite plants for year-round interest that are really, really tough. So I kind of looked around the landscape last summer when we were in the middle of that drought and was like, okay, who still looks happy? Who is thriving in this terrible drought? And kind of put together a little list of my favorites. And I'm big on 4 seasons of interest when I am designing the garden. So these are some of my favorites. I will say, pycnanthemum for in the summertime, man, that is like a native bee buffet. Like you could probably count, you know, a dozen species of bees working on those plants in the summertime. And they're really unusual and fun looking plant in the garden. Asters, oblongifolias. I won't have a garden without aster oblongifolias in it. It's my favorite. You know, it's just got that really late October into early November bloom period, which is super important for migrating insects, that they have a place to stop and get something to eat at that time when not much is blooming. Solidago, I feel like is a really important plant to have in your garden. A lot of insects depend upon that. And again, having things in your garden in the wintertime, like panicum and the little blue stem, those grasses, the seed heads, as well as you know, seed heads from things like Echinacea, Monarda, Rudbeckia, feeding those birds.
And make a comment?
Yes.
You have the Amsonia hubertii up there, but the Amsonia tabernae montana grows great around here, and it's native to the coastal plain, not to the Midwest.
Okay, I will add that. Yeah, this, I had popped him in there because of how drought tolerant it was last year. So I'll have to pay attention and see if the tabernae montana is equally tough. I know that one grows in moister sites, doesn't it?
I have it in fairly dry, they're garden beds, but they're fairly dry.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to.
And it
pay
also takes
attention.
hard shade as long as you cut it.
Right,
back.
yes. Okay, great, thank you so much.
Tucked underneath, magnolia. Sweet big magnolia, it's like at the edge of the garden, so it gets the western sun. It's on the
Okay.
west side.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's real well, like I chop it off and move it.
Thank you. I will add. I wanted to, offer some of my favorite resources. Some of them are actually back on the table there if you wanted to check them out before you leave. So the two on the left, the native plants for wildlife habitat and conservation landscaping and the plant invaders of mid-Atlantic natural areas, those are both available for free in PDF form online. But I have the printed copies here if you want to look through them. They're great. The top one is a great kind of quick reference guide. Like if I'm just trying to make a quick list, you're not going to learn a ton about the plant in there, but it's kind of a great way to just sort of skim through and find out, is it native to the coastal plain? Will it grow in full sun? You know, how much moisture does it need? And then you can kind of like make your list and dive deeper in, you know, using some other more, juicy resources. And then probably like how many people haven't read Bringing Nature Home? In this room, probably not many. So that's a great one. And then I also really love his book, The Living Landscape, which is back on the table, mostly because at the back, he's got a table that says for the Mid-Atlantic region, what the value, the habitat value of each of those plants that's listed is. So it'll say how many species of caterpillars can utilize this tree. And I really love to be able to kind of look at that and gauge, you know, one plant over another, what's going to bring the most value to the landscape. The Essential Native Trees and Shrubs book is also, and then Carol also brought her copy. That is a favorite resource for me when I'm doing design work, just because sometimes I'm like, okay, I need a plant that does this, 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 and this, and I can cross-reference those 4 lists within that book. It's very nice. When I'm Googling a plant and wanting more information, these are some of my favorite websites. So North Creek Nurseries, they are only wholesale to the trade. However, they have a fabulous plant finder tool on their website that really helps, you know, kind of pick a bunch of attributes and get yourself a list of plants that you might be interested in using in a specific space, like dry shade. So that's really helpful resource. And they're actually, you know, they're the nursery that's growing out the plugs that a lot of our local nurseries are buying in and potting up and sending out into the retail space. Missouri Botanical Garden, while not in our, you know, not in our region, has really, really excellent plant fact sheets. So, you know, and it's not just for plants that are native to Missouri. So they're a great resource when I want to learn more about a plant. I can look to them. Same with North Carolina State University. If I do a Google search and their site comes up, I click on that because they have really, really excellent, intensive information on plants. Wildflower.org is also a great source of information about plants. And Matt Cuba Center has a wealth of information, and I especially love their plant trial work that they're doing. If you're uncertain about a cultivar, you know, they're doing a lot of work figuring out like what cultivars are actually valuable to our wildlife and what cultivars are basically just the same as planting a non-native plant in our garden. And then, of course, our local Adkins Arboretum has excellent resources on their website. It's a great place to look. And there are handouts on the back table, and one of them is a brand new resource that ShoreRivers and Adkins Arboretum collaborated on to create, and it is our top 10 list. There's a top 10 woody plants and top 10 perennial plants for pollinators. And then there's a little like example garden, pollinator garden in there that my coworker created. So definitely take one of those with you when you go. And then I just wanted to make a pitch for anybody who doesn't already know about it, probably in this space, everybody's aware, but the Homegrown National Park, which is an initiative that World Wildlife Foundation has put forth in collaboration with Doug Calumet. And so that's a great place to learn more about native plants for our area. And you can also map your garden and be counted as being part of our Homegrown National Park. You can get a sign and put it in your yard so people know what the heck it is you're doing over there. So that's just a really fun website. And then I wanted to let everybody know that ShoreRivers has a program called Tree the Shore. We have grant money that was given to us as part of Maryland's 5 million tree initiative. And we are planting, currently we have money to plant a little over 1,600 trees. And our focus is on planting these trees in our small towns. So in our more densely populated areas and creating more of that urban canopy that is gonna shade our streets and provide that public benefit for people that we know trees are so important for. And we are only planting native trees through this program. If you live in a small town or in an HOA that is very bereft of canopy, I would encourage you to either scan this QR code or you can just go on our website and sign up for a free tree. So, you know, your request will come to me. One of our volunteer tree stewards will come out and do a site evaluation and determine how many and what kind of trees would be appropriate. And then we will take it from there. So we plant the tree, you don't have to do anything except take care of it once it's in the ground. And the trees we're planting, as you can see in this photo, are of a decent stature. They're between 4 and 10 feet tall, depending on the species, when they go in the ground.
And what nurseries do you procure the trees from?
So it depends. We've gotten quite a few from Unity, some from Eastern Shore Nursery in Easton, some from a nursery called they're not well known. They're only growing like for the trade.
Natives.
Sorry?
Delmarva natives.
No, he has a few trees that he's starting. I think he has 2 species he's growing, but I don't think they're ready for sale yet. It's just like those branch.
Nursery, the state nursery.
No, the state nursery has seedlings. Yeah, they're doing like bare root. You probably never. Oh, Fair Hill Horticulture. That's who it is. It's the Fry family. So they have a dairy farm, and then one of their sons started this nursery business. So they provided some beautiful trees for us. So far, that's who we've been getting them from. But I don't know. I'm a little worried. The competition for native trees is pretty fierce right now. There's a lot of money out there. Which is
People have been looking for shrubs a lot because, especially, if sometimes you have a forest and here's your lawn, right? So people looking for a better transition. So shrubs that are like as fruits, like you mentioned, the aronia, the strawberry, yeah. Some people are looking for those kind of things, like rent.
yeah. So
What would be besides the strawberry? What the inkberry?
for like that transitional space.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Buttonbush is a nice one. Saprophyllus.
That's more.
Yeah, I like some moisture. There's viburnum would be lovely. Yeah,
The native roses are good on the smaller side,
Native bush.
native roses, so all there's 4 or 5. They're 5 to 6 feet max, but it's still woody and shrubby.
yeah. You mentioned coralberry earlier. Coralberry is a nice one too.
It's very short, but
Yeah. There are, you know, depending on the kind of soil you have, blueberries could be, but they're very
Blueberries,
finicky about their siting. So, you know, they definitely want acid soil. They want some organic matter in there.
Do you use much of the native, beauty berries?
Yes. Yeah, blueberry is very famous. Yeah.
You had the ilex decidua up earlier, is it possum hawk? That's a nice, I mean. shrubby.
Oh, the viburnum? Yeah.
No, it's an ilex. Maybe you had the viburnum, but there is.
Winterberry,
ilex.
verticillata.
No, I'm thinking the ilex, it's also called possum hawk, it's ilex decidua, it's a decidua.
Oh,
plant.
okay. It's the problem with the names.
And it's, but it's a nice shrubby. You can often get it at the tree nursery. I got mine at the United States Tree Nursery like 4 or 5 years ago. They're growing. So
Nice.
many of those. Not that big. They're doing great.
So in conclusion, I just want to encourage us all to take action. And, you know, ways you can do that are to make your yard more, you know, river friendly, lots more native plants, less lawn. Share this information, friend, a neighbor, or a landscaper. I will say that Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional certification, that is a program that's aimed at landscape professionals. Conchetta is a COPLP certified, so am I. And if you find that you have a landscaper that you like working with, but maybe isn't doing things the way you particularly would like them to, you can suggest that they become certified. ShoreRivers does offer scholarships to landscapers within our watershed to go through this program for free. And so, you know, kind of, that's a great way, you know, if you influence a landscaper, you're influencing, you know, a really wide swath of the watershed. So, we love to work with other community organizations. So, you know, if you're involved with a garden club or a faith-based organization or, you know, any other community organization that you know, have an idea for some kind of restoration project or a planting project that you want some support with, please reach out to me. We're always looking for volunteers. On our website, there are a myriad number of ways that you can volunteer with us. And of course, in these challenging times, we're very much grateful for our base of donors as government funding becomes less reliable. And I want to encourage us all to be stubborn optimists, which is increasingly difficult, but we can do it. So, you know, and a stubborn optimist is optimistic in the face of, you know, kind of overwhelming odds, I would say. You know, just have to kind of keep the faith. So, and that's. Conchetta, were there questions from the chat at all that we should have addressed?
No, besides, folks are interested in your resources. So,
Oh, excellent.
we're, and this is the chat already, but we'll be on the Delmarva Wild Ones chapter website. We're gonna have a resource page. We'll stick all the ones we mentioned for sure.
Okay, cool.
Jason and I talked about something. We'll have to be building that. So if anybody has resources, just email them through the consciousness to me.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.